Across the Spider-Verse is easily one of the best films to come out this year. Its balance of interweaving storylines and building lovable characters you care about make it what it is, and is the reason why it's one of the most successful breakout films in both the box office and the eyes of the critics. On top of it being a revolutionary animated film, making it an instant classic in the history of cinema. But there was something I caught during a rewatch. And whether it's intentional or not, it led me down a road to truly understand the film's end. So, of course, there's gonna be some spoilers ahead. You ready? Alright, let's do this. In the film, there are these things called canon events, sequences in which every spider person would have to experience in their respective stories.
They are the canon. Chapters that are a part of every spider story, every time.
Such an event was shown, but not thoroughly explained, shortly before in Pemberton, where Miles saved a police captain that was slated to die after their fight with the Spot.
Inspector Singh's death was a canon event. You weren't supposed to be there, and you weren't supposed to save him.
Now, the ramifications of said canon events not even happening are destructive to say the least. World-ending, quite literally. And the reason why he's so uptight about it is because he himself had caused such an event before. Now, what Miguel is telling us is good and all to, give more context about the entire situation, but then he kept going on, and it raised some suspicions. Let's take a look at his explanation of his event. Miguel found another world where he had a family and was happy, and that version was killed. So, what does he do?
So I replaced him.
Okay, great. He gets to live a seemingly fulfilling life with a family, and it ends happily ever after. But of course, it doesn't. That world breaks due to this supposed canon event. Let's go back to him explaining what a canon event is.
They are the canon. Chapters that are a part of every spider story, every time.
So, the question is, how does Miguel replacing himself in another world break that Spider-Man's canon? I mean, we clearly see a Peter Parker-esque classic red and blue Spider-Man in the world as it crumbles. So, seeing this, there are really only two situations we can consider. One where the world is supposed to have a Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man, and one where it shouldn't have him at all. Let's look at it at him not being Spider-Man in it. If he's never supposed to be Spider-Man, he obviously doesn't break any supposed canon events, since, well, he was never Spider-Man to begin with, or slated to, thus not mattering in that Spider-Man story. He's basically a background character. Odd, okay. Let's look at it with him being Spider-Man. Then, it would kinda make sense, since that dimension now has two Spider-Man in it, thus maybe breaking this canon. And this situation may be the one the movie runs with because they do show him in the suit. But then it still doesn't make sense because in Miles' world, there were in a brief period two Spider-Men that was not supposed to be. Being why Miles is the anomaly. Even knowing that rebuttal, his visual explanation of that world breaking is substantially different from what we actually saw in Pavitar's world. One is breaking like glass and the other looks like it's being glitched through a black hole. Can it be just a difference in visual style? Yeah, maybe, but we've seen Lord and Miller be very careful with the amount of detail they put in their films. Just look at the very many Easter eggs and minuscule hints spread throughout Into the Spider-Verse as to how this film would go. And I'd like to think that quirk would follow them here as well. So, weird explanation of canon events with many questions about their validity in the first place. But it could also just be a coincidence, nothing to really ring any alarm, so to say. That was until another very suspicious crumb was laid upon us. During the Nueva York train chase, a very odd set of details was sprinkled as both Miles and Miguel are climbing the train.
What are those claws? Dude, are you sure you're even Spider-Man?
Up to that point, Miguel was obviously pissed, but after Miles had said that, he just went berserk. It's a total mood change to higher levels. Makes you think, doesn't it? Then moments later, as Miguel explains that Miles getting bit was the event that began everything, burst cards are flickering throughout to give a bit of punch to the characters visually, and an interesting combination of colors are used during this bit of dialogue. I'm not saying it is what it is, but it's definitely a choice, especially when you compare their themes against one another. They don't sound exactly the same, but they have a very similar vibe going for them, desolate cyberpunk. But Miguel blowing up after Miles saying, "Are you sure you aren't Spider-Man?" feels off. Even after all the things he said previously, this was the one that broke the camel's back. Now, all this looks very far reaches that could go easily under the radar where you can't slow-mo every single scene. I get it. But I believe there is a smoking gun. And it's when Gwen gets sent back to her world, where she finds out, and we find out, this very, very, very important bit of information.
I can't.
Why not?
Because I quit.
When?
About halfway through your big speech.
And this is where I feel like the bedrock's been placed, the dominoes have fallen, and the pieces have been put together. Gwen's response?
Wait a minute, you're not gonna be captain? That means...
What does it mean? A moment of realization? Clarity? I mean, for Captain Stacy to die, he'd need to be both A, a police officer, and B, a captain. Would the close police captain that never even got to be captain in the first place be a canon event? Miguel himself even said it just has to be a police captain that Spider-Man was close to, not necessarily Captain Stacy.
A police captain close to Spider-Man dies, saving a kid from falling rubble during a battle with an arch nemesis.
But there's no one we know in Gwen's world that she's close to and also happens to at least be a police officer other than her father. Wouldn't her world start to crumble like glass or be sucked into a black hole? Mumbattan just took a couple minutes to fall apart, so clearly something's off, and she knows it as well. From his explanation of these canon events, to his outburst after the intervention, and Gwen's reaction to her father quitting and having no world-breaking outcome, it's clear as day that someone isn't saying something. And I feel like that someone is Miguel O'Hara. Throughout the whole movie, Lord and Miller don't present him as the villain, but rather as the antagonist. That is no accident. And I feel like, to his core, he's hiding much more as to who he actually is. But I guess we'll find out in the next one.